Hey everyone, and you're listening to Ankur Variku on Voice with Variku. On this podcast, I talk to you about entrepreneurship, how to grow in life, manage personal finances, handle failures, and a lot more things that just come to my mind. The episode begins.
I bet my life that if you saw an article with the headline, "Here are 5 things that billionaires do every morning," you would find it incredibly hard to resist opening up that article. Or if I were to share an article with you which said 3 ways that you can crack any interview that you wanted, you'll find it insanely hard not to open up that article. There is something about these lists that convince us that they are important. There's something about these lists that convince us that there is a path or a predetermined journey that others have taken. And if you were to take the same thing, you will end up in the same spot that they have. And that's why we love these lists. We love these 3 things, 5 things, 7 things. You wouldn't believe number 6 and whatnot. And I remember that I was pretty much in the same spot as well several years back, where I thought that there was a process. I thought that there was a method to the madness. I thought that there was actually a logical, step-by-step procedure to get to life's goals. And if you were to just emulate that, you would end up in the same spot. And I remember this fantastic podcast between Naval Ravikant and his mentor, Kapil Gupta, where they were talking about the exact same thing. And Kapil uses this word called prescriptions. We all love prescriptions. We all want to believe that life has a prescription. We all want to believe that if we were to follow the prescription, we would end up in the same spot as what the prescription defined for us. And he just hates prescriptions. And they went further, which fascinated me, to illustrate this point. They said that if you were to ask the most successful men and women in the world how they got there, it's quite likely that they will struggle with that response. They wouldn't know. And that's why they would term it on luck, they would term it on hard work, they would term it on something that's inborn, basically just dismiss it, and we would call it humility. Oh my God, that's so awesome. He or she is so humble. But the truth is they're being actually truthful to themselves. They have no idea how they got to that point. And when I say no, of course, that's an exaggeration. What I mean is they really can't pinpoint how they are the ones who are making it through while they have seen several others who've gone through the same journey not make it. So they don't believe in that prescription. And if you were to ask, say, someone like Roger Federer, "Hey, Roger, how did you get to this enviable position where you're perhaps the greatest tennis player that the world has ever seen?" They'll give you some flimsy answer. But guess what? Even if you were to just follow every single thing that Roger has done in his life until now, it's quite likely you will not end up in the same spot that Roger has. And it's not because you don't have that capability or anything else. It's just that there is something else beyond the prescription. But we don't want to believe that. We don't want to believe that. We genuinely want to believe that everyone can get to the same spot that we have envied in others. And it's simply because there is a path to it. So the next time you actually see any article, any video, any forward that tricks you into believing that there is a 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 step way to get to a certain point, remind yourself that life has an insane amount of reality. It has a surprising amount of reality. It is not as straightforward as we make it to be. It is not a prescription. I remember when I was growing up, the aim in life was to become a space scientist. The aim in life was to go to NASA, to eventually be on Mars. And guess what? The prescription was rather simple. It was to study hard. It was to get to a good PhD program in the US. It was to just work your way through and frankly, one step, and you'll get there. And it's the same thing that I came to believe even when I came back from the US, which was, oh my God, my life's just been destroyed. I've just dropped out of my PhD and now I have no goal, no direction, no focus, no clarity. It's all confusing. But here's the prescription. And the prescription is go for an MBA program, get a good job, and you'll figure it out. And you'll get married and you'll have kids and you'll have that nice house and that nice car and you'll go on those fancy vacations and you wear all these nice clothes. And that's the prescription. That's what life is. And the more I began to travel that journey, it just became obvious that there's several hundreds, thousands, millions of people traveling the same journey, but they're nearly not having the same outcomes that was sold to me. So there was very obviously something else at play. And I still don't know what it is, frankly. I wish I knew so that I could be helpful and this podcast could give you some actionable. All that I'm sharing is I'm convinced that there is no list. I'm convinced that there is no prescription. And that's why when I began to make these choices that were outside of the prescription, when I decided to quit my plush consulting job and start up, when I decided to quit my first startup and go out and figure out what I wanted to do next, when I was happy in my role at Groupon, was doing immensely well, was successful in the world's eyes, I quit all of that and then started Nearby. And then you quit Nearby and you go on your own to figure something out. All of these are outside of the prescriptions. All of these are outside of the rules that the world has laid out for you. And the fascinating thing that I can tell you with confidence today is that only when you do things outside of the prescription do you give yourself a shot to change your orbit. If you end up doing what everyone else is doing, you will always end up more or less in the same spot. But that spot is not where you want to go. Because the spots that we envy, the spots that we would want to get to, the higher positions in life, they don't come by doing the same things that everyone's doing. And they also don't come by a prescription. They come simply by not following the prescription. They come with the realization that if I were to have this situation, this context right in front of me, every data that I can see, every experience that I've had, every emotion that I've experienced, and if I were to do an opinion poll asking people, hey, what would you do if you were in this exact same spot? 90% people will have just one answer, the obvious one. But that's the prescription. And only the 10%, the ones who would come up with something dramatically different, something that is very unique, something that's very rare, perhaps risky, perhaps the world thinks of it as crazy, it's challenging, it scares the shit out of you, and yet you would do it. That's when you set yourself up for changing the orbit. Prescriptions are lovely because they give you the sense of control, the sense of security, the sense of stability. But prescriptions are dangerous because they all boil you down to the average. And only when you go beyond the list, beyond the 3 things that you can do, the 5 things that you can do, the 7 things that you can do you realize that there are so many more things that are unique to you that you can do, which will set you up for a completely different orbit. Set your own prescriptions. Make your own prescriptions. And make it in such a way that it doesn't act as a prescription for anyone else.
If you like this podcast episode, then please remember to subscribe to the channel because every week you will be notified.